For decades, economies around the world have talked about growth in simple terms: more GDP, more jobs, and more prosperity. India's story over the last 15 years fits the narrative better than almost any other major country. India is one of the fastest growing large economies on earth. Today, it is expected to surpass even some G7 economies in total economic output within the next decade. Mumbai, Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Gurgaon. These names have been synonymous with global startups, unicorn valuations, and digital ambition. But there is a paradox embedded in this success story, a question that many Indians, especially young professionals, ask. If India's economy is booming, if startup culture is thriving, and if the demographic dividends is supposed to be a source of strength, then why are so many Indians actively seeking opportunities abroad? Why is the brain drain not reversing but accelerating? And before you answer instinctively, consider this. Every migration flow has two parts: push factors that divide people away, and pull factors that draw them elsewhere. In today's analysis, we're going to unpack both sides of that equation using data, research, structural analysis, and on-ground observations. We won't pretend that the answer is simple, and we won't reduce it to nationalism or ideology. Instead, we are going to explore whether economic growth as currently measured actually translates into individual prosperity, opportunity, and long-term life satisfaction. We would like to draw your attention to supporting us in our struggle to produce high-quality, valuable content. Your likes, comments, and engagements really help us grow as a tiny fish in a massive ocean, and reach more viewers by taking tiny steps that help us massively. Please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and definitely leave your comments. Also watch the video until the end. All of this helps us massively. Thank you for your support. Let's move back to the video. India's GDP has roughly tripled over the last 15 years, and economic growth rates have routinely outpaced global averages. Between 2015 and 2023, India's nominal GDP growth hovered around 6 to 8% annually, according to the World Bank and IMF. Even as many advanced economies struggled with low growth following the 2008 crisis and the COVID pandemic. Yet if we dig deeper into the composition of that growth, we find something interesting. The service sector contributes more than 50% of India's GDP, from IT and software to finance, telecommunication, and professional services. Meanwhile, manufacturing share remains lower than what we see in China or other rapidly industrializing economies. What this means is that a large portion of growth is driven by high-value services that tend to concentrate in a few urban centers. That creates opportunity for specific talent pools, but also generates what economists call spatial income polarization. That is, wealth concentrated in certain cities and industries rather than distributed broadly across regions and sectors. This is not unique to India. It's been seen in other growing economies, but the difference here is scale. India's population is nearly 1.5 billion people. A labor market this large creates enormous statistical variations between top income clusters and average individual incomes. According to the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, while India's headline unemployment rate has fluctuated, youth unemployment, especially among graduates, has persistently remained high or underemployed, and wage growth, when adjusted for inflation, has kept pace with the headline GDP figures for many entry-level sectors. So the first part of the paradox becomes clear. India's economy can be large without being deeply inclusive, which means growth can exist alongside persistent economic insecurity for many individuals, especially early in their careers. Now let's talk about India's claim to digital fame, the startup ecosystem. In 2014, India had fewer than 10 unicorns. Unicorns are startups valued at $1 billion or more. As of 2025, the number has grown to over 100, according to multiple venture capital industry reports. That's astonishing growth curve, but here's a crucial nuance. Unicorns do not necessarily generate employment proportional to their valuation. A startup valued at $3 billion might have only a few thousand employees, whereas a large public enterprise in traditional manufacturing might employ tens of thousands. In fact, research from the Brookings Institution and Indian industry analysts suggest that less than 10% of the total formal employment in India today comes from high-growth startups. So while unicorn count make great headlines, they are a very thin slice of an overall employment pie. And here's another structural issue. Startups' valuations are heavily dependent on foreign capital inflows. A significant proportion of funding for Indian startups comes from the US, European, or East Asian venture funds. This makes these ecosystems more sensitive to global risk sentiments. For example, when global liquidity tightened in 2022 and 2023, many Indian startups faced layoffs or contractions, not because India's economy was collapsing, but because the global venture funding environment became less generous. That variable foreign capital dependency creates instability in local labor markets. So while India's startup boom is real, its job creation capacity relative to total jobs is not as impactful as many would assume. This situation creates a cognitive dissonance for educated youth. India has a booming startup ecosystem, but it doesn't necessarily produce enough stable, high-paying jobs to support the entire workforce that aspires to digital knowledge careers. Let's talk about why people leave. Here we need to look at international labor markets. According to OECD data, Indian nationals are among the fastest growing immigrant groups in countries like Canada, Australia, the US, and the UK. For example, in recent years, over 100,000 Indians received Canadian permanent residency status annually. And Indians are one of the largest recipient group for H-1B visas in the US. Why is this significant? Because destination countries are not simply attracting workers randomly, they are attracting specific skills. Healthcare professionals, softwares and IT engineers, data scientists, research and academic talents, technical consultants, and analysts. These are precisely the same skill categories where India's education system produces large cohorts each year. But here's where the economic pull factor begins to matter. Wages for these professionals in developed economies are often multiple times higher, even after adjusting for cost of living differences. Adding to this, benefits like unemployment insurance, healthcare coverage, pension systems, and social safety nets. This becomes compelling for many workers. So when young professionals weigh options not just financially but in terms of security, predictability, and long-term stability, developed labor markets become rational alternatives, not just aspirational fantasies. Beyond economics, there are structural push factors within the domestic context. First is the issue of employment quality. While India produces millions of graduates annually, many end up in underdeveloped or low-wage jobs relative to their qualifications. According to the data from All India Council for Technical Education, a significant percentage of engineers and management graduates struggle to find roles that match their educational level. That mismatch creates career frustration and stagnation. Secondly, there are infrastructural challenges. Major cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru, and Chennai grapple with traffic congestion, pollution, exorbitant housing costs, and social stresses that affect quality of life. Even if wages are higher than smaller cities, these costs can erode net well-being. Then there is the psychological dimension. In global career markets, the perception of opportunity abroad is amplified by social media, diaspora success stories, and institutional recruitment pipelines linking Indian talent with foreign universities and firms. This combination of economic push and social pull creates a feedback loop. People leave not only for rational reasons, but because the social narrative reinforces that leaving is the logical next step. Now let's go deeper beyond economics and logistics into value and identity. Young Indians today are disproportionately educated, globally connected, and digitally networked compared to past generations. They consume global media, they compare job markets worldwide, and they benchmark their careers against international standards. That cultural shift matters. Unlike previous generations that prioritize local stability, many young Indians now prioritize flexibility, global mobility, and diversified career trajectories. They are not just looking for a job, they are looking for a career path that feels aligned with global opportunity, global wage structure, and global quality of life standards. This trend is not purely economics and it's not purely ideological. It is cultural. It reflects a complex redefinition of success. This is the million-dollar question. To retain its brightest minds, India must address both push and pull factors simultaneously. Some possible solutions could be structural reforms that increase high-quality job creation outside major urban centers, incentives for R&D and knowledge industries, and improvements in healthcare, education, and urban living conditions. But reforms require political will, long-term strategy, and alignment between state and private institutions. More importantly, they require a shift in how success is defined, from income alone to multidimensional prosperity that includes stability, quality of life, and long-term security. So, what we conclude is that India's economic story is not a failure, but its growth narrative has structural contradictions. If you found this analysis valuable, please support the channel by subscribing, dropping a like, and clicking the bell icon so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, we'd love to read your comments, so don't forget to comment down below. That helps us massively. Thanks for watching.